Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into something a little different today, and honestly, it is absolutely fascinating. Usually we think of complex history as being buried in hundreds of pages of dense academic text, right? But sometimes a graphic designer and an author get together and literally put their entire massive historical argument right on the front cover. So we're going to decode a single, super information-dense visual artifact today. It's like a giant puzzle hiding a global story in plain sight. So how exactly did the West come to rule? I mean, it's a huge question. It's dominated history books and economic debates for centuries. And you know the mainstream narrative. It usually paints this picture of a solitary, brilliant Europe pulling itself up by its own bootstraps, inventing modern science, discovering new lands, building the modern economy entirely from scratch. But what if the visual evidence points to a completely different story? What if it wasn't about isolation at all, but about collision? Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our primary source material for today. It's the cover of a really thought-provoking book by historians Alexander Anievas and Kerem Nishanjoglu. At first glance, sure, it's just a stunning piece of graphic design with all these layered colors and historical motifs. But we aren't just looking at pretty pictures. The publishers have literally embedded the author's entire and honestly quite controversial thesis right here. We're going to break this artwork down layer by layer, color by color. Section 1. The Geopolitical Pronics. Before we get lost in the artwork itself, we've got to understand the structural foundation of what they're arguing. Let's just isolate the text. That main title is bold, practically screaming off the page, How the West Came to Rule. But the real secret to unlocking this whole thing, it's that subtitle nestled right beneath it in the dark band, The Geopolitical Origins of Capitalism. Notice this isn't just a generic book about who had the biggest armies. It is specifically drilling down into the origins of our modern economic system. And that word, geopolitical, it is doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting here. When we say geopolitical, we're talking about the interplay of geography, power, and international relations across entirely different regions of the globe. By slapping that word right on the cover, they are setting the stage immediately. They're arguing that capitalism absolutely wasn't born in European isolation. It wasn't some local phenomenon that just popped up in England. It was forged through intense global interconnectedness. Section 2. The Top Tier. Eastern Empires. All right, keeping that premise in mind, let's dissect this from the top down. Notice the distinct blue and teal color band right at the very top. See how it physically separates this historical sphere from the rest? Tucked right behind the word how, we get this very specific, carefully chosen landscape. Now, what's really interesting here are the visual clues packed into this teal band. You've got sweeping domes and minaret-style architecture, typical of vast Eastern and Islamic empires. We're talking the immense wealth of the Ottomans or Safavids. Then you see these large encampments with highly structured tents, suggesting powerful nomadic centers of authority. And if you look super closely right along the top edge, there's non-Western script. Looks like Arabic or Persian calligraphy. So this top tier firmly sets the stage, a world where Eastern empires were incredibly powerful, highly organized, and totally dominant way before Western Europe took the spotlight. Section 3. The middle tier, Mongol power. Moving down, we hit what is easily the most visually chaotic part of the cover. This striking red band right in the middle, sitting directly behind the massive word West. You literally can't ignore it. And the color red? That's a deliberate choice. It signals urgency, conflict, blood, and just profound, rapid change. Look at the action in this red band. It is a chaotic clash of horse-mounted archers, engaged in this fierce, incredibly kinetic battle. This almost certainly represents the Mongol Empire and those massive nomadic armies sweeping across the Eurasian steppe. But here's the thing, it's not just a picture of war. These horse-mounted empires acted as this massive connective tissue. They caused huge disruption for sure, but they also violently linked the East and the West. They forced the exchange of technologies and fundamentally destabilized those older empires we just talked about in the teal band. It's the highly mobile engine of global connection. Section 4. The bottom tier, colonial conquest. Let's move to and see how this builds at the foundation. Down at the base, we have this gold-colored band sitting directly behind the words to rule. And wow, the tone, the color, the subject matter, it shifts dramatically from those roaring nomadic horsemen right above them. The contrast is stark, right? We've got European explorers or conquistadors fully decked out in armor, carrying spears and early weaponry. They're in these tense encounters with indigenous peoples who have totally different styles of weaponry and clothing. And faintly in the background, you can just make out the sails of large ocean-faring ships. This gold band represents European maritime expansion, colonial conquest, and extracting wealth from the Americas. It's the final piece of the puzzle. It's the moment Europe leverages a newly connected world to step onto the global stage as a dominating force. Section 5. A Global Origin Story. And this brilliantly illustrates how the whole argument comes together. We've got our three pieces. Step 1, the massive presence and wealth of Eastern and Islamic empires up top. Step 2, the kinetic expansion of horse-mounted armies in the middle that bridged East and West, transferring vital tech like gunpowder. And finally, Step 3, European maritime exploration, which was actually driven by a need to bypass those powerful Eastern empires. It's a cascading chain of events. You don't get the gold band without the red band, and you don't get the red band without the teal band. The visual is arguing that the rise of the West literally depended on the non-European world. So the crucial point is this. When we zoom back out and read how the West came to rule, we can't read it in a vacuum anymore. That bold typography grabs your attention, but the artwork completely flips its meaning. The cover is telling us the West didn't just wake up one day and decide to invent modern capitalism. It was pushed, pulled, funded, and shaped by everything happening in the background. The text says the West, but the image screams the world. So, what does this all mean? Well, just look at how beautifully complex this design is. It challenges those standard narratives we always just accept. Based on these intersections, from Eastern domes to Mongol archers to Spanish galleons, are the origins of the modern economic world truly a solitary European achievement? Or are they, as this cover argues, the result of a deeply interconnected, messy but unmistakably global history? Definitely something to think about next time you judge a book by its cover. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.